Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized to you and your family? Will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation change? Hi, I'm Jerry Mangona, your Edward Jones financial advisor. I live here in Corktown, just a few blocks from the Daily Detroit studios, and when we work together, we'll focus on what's important to you. We'll use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. And we'll partner together to help your strategy stay on track. Contact me toll-free today at 866-975-8655. Again, that's 866-975-8655. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. It is Friday, March 24th, 2023, and hailing from east of Woodward, I'm Jer Stays.
And west of Woodward, I am Devon O'Reilly.
It is good to talk to you, sir.
Good to talk to you, Jer, as we're orienting ourselves here. I'm just west of Woodward today, so we're very close to on Woodward. I feel like I'm in tune with all topics that we're going to talk about. But west of Woodward, but just by about 50 feet.
Well, there is a running joke that if I cross 8 Mile, I start to lose my pieces, much like, something out of like X-Men or Thanos, where I just start dissolving. And so does that happen to you east of Woodward?
It for sure does. I feel like, Jer, actually, you are much more bi-coastal as far as Woodward goes than I am. I rarely venture to the east side of Woodward. You are frequently on the west side, so you're a little bit more well-traveled in that regard.
I was even in, and I mentioned this on the show yesterday, I was even in your neck of the woods for the state of the county. I was at the Dearborn Performing Arts Center, which is a place that, honestly, I had never been to before. I also did not realize that there was a big old dog park stuck back there.
Yeah, there's a huge dog park back there. Welcome to the Michael A. Guido Theater, the Performing Arts Center. It's a fine place. How'd you enjoy your time there?
Oh, I mean, it was a thing, did the thing. I was surprised, though, that one of the fields I drove by, there was a sign that said King Boring Field. And I'm like, what is that? Like the king of being boring? Like, do you sleep at this field? Do you have any insight on this being a Dearbornite?
Just a tiny bit, Jer. You caught me a little off guard, but we always used to joke about King Boring Field because it does sound like the Lord of the most boring. But essentially, that's two last names. So the last name King, the last name Boring, they were both integral into the Parks and Recreation space in Dearborn. Again, I could go deeper, but I know that much. So it is not one person. There is no king or lord of boring. It is a last name King, last name Boring, integral to Dearborn.
See, to me, I thought it was maybe like an old name from a company not around anymore, like King Boring Incorporated. They made auto parts or something. That was my number one theory.
Right, or like the Boring Company that Elon Musk owns, which is like basically kind of a shell company, which is a giant stupid thing that's supposed to be drilling underground that I don't think actually exists.
Well, they've made tunnels. They've reinvented tunnels.
Yeah, I think they've made tunnels. I don't know if they can go anywhere, but I digress.
So, sir, where have you been?
So, Jer, I've been a few places, but they all kind of revolve around the same thing, and that is something I'd like to kind of declare as the new thing here in the Detroit area, and that's the power lunch.
Wait. So I'm familiar with the term of a power lunch, but I remember it from like the 90s.
Well, those who have listened before know that I've obviously been a big brunch person for a while. Brunch has been a staple of mine in my younger years. But, nowadays, especially post-COVID, back to work, the power lunch has really become a thing. And to me, it's more about quality over quantity. So some of the places in Detroit that have been most successful opening up during the day have been the apparatus rooms, the parks, the central kitchens, places that host a real business crowd and people who want to have a beer, a cocktail, a martini, a glass of wine during lunch, talk business, talk a little pleasure. That's become a real big thing now. And I'm noticing a trend towards kind of what I'm calling the power lunch.
Interesting. So no padded jackets for ladies in that with the shoulders? None of that?
That's the best part, Jer, is with the new way of work, no one's wearing any kind of padded jackets at all. It's come as you are. Wear jeans and a blazer, wear a quarter zip, wear whatever you want. Just bring your ideas. And I think the goal of the power lunch is to come away with some kind of a business idea, some kind of a plan, some kind of a strategy. And that justifies you having a alcoholic beverage at your lunch.
Interesting. I feel like maybe we could have a power lunch for Daily Detroit listeners who happen to be so inclined or around for it. It's interesting to me. It seems like then that's a shift because you're down there most days.
Right.
And so to me, that feels like a shift from, say, the cheap and cheerful or kind of the office worker, some might say corporate drone or whatever term you're going to use for it, a shift in what kind of food is served because it's a shift in who's down there.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have we've covered this a lot as far as what's open, and a lot less is open. There's no doubt about it. There's fewer places open for lunch these days. You can get a super casual, so you could go to a Potbelly, a Jimmy John's, those type of places are open. But I think more and more where people are going because they're down here is, like I said, the apparatus rooms, even the Grand Trunks, places like that. I've seen an uptick. Checker Bar. I've been to Checker Bar. You can power lunch at a casual place, Jer. It's not necessarily fancy only. You can power lunch at a lot of places downtown, but I think you're seeing less, like you said, less of the, I don't know how to say it, the quicken workers, the quicken drones, as we've colloquially called them previously, less of those people downtown. So it's kind of more of the real business set, more of the traveler set. You see a lot of people in town for business meetings.
Like decision makers.
The apparatus room was buzzing this week with people when I stopped in, seemingly from all over the place, taking meetings with their bags and travel gear, ready to jet off out of town. So it's a really interesting crowd that comes down for lunch these days.
And I understand from looking at the Instagram that you stopped by one of the new places. It's actually in Midtown.
Yes, so you don't just have to power lunch downtown. This is kind of serves a double purpose here, but I went to Mad Nice, which is also a little bit of a man about town thing, Jared. I would be the person a few years ago to come on and tell you about Mad Nice just in general, but I'm here to tell you that they also do a great power lunch.
I know a number of listeners have messaged me like, Jer, you got to get to Mad Nice. Jer, this, that. And I just haven't had the chance yet. So what were your first impressions?
Hey, Jer, you know what? Never mind if you got a baby, you still got to be the man about town. So yes, I will be the first of the daily crew to go to Mad Nice.
Intrepid, if you will. Sacrifice.
Yeah, it's a sacrifice. I still feel that responsibility. Someone's got to be a man about town. Might as well be me. The really cool thing that I noticed in perusing, first of all, when I started learning about the space, is the fact that they're open for lunch and dinner, basically Monday through Sunday. They're open every day for lunch and dinner. I mean, it's really rare because a lot of these places now are opening up, 5 to midnight, Thursday through Sunday, which for someone like me who doesn't have a ton of flexibility on the weekend schedule, that's not great. But Mad Nice has a very, very open schedule. And just to give people an orientation here, we're talking about the old Will Leather Goods store on 2nd Street, basically 2nd and Alexandrine. People can picture that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge space. If you had ever been in Will Leather Goods, it's a massive, massive space. So this place is huge. There's tons of seating. There's a big circular or half circular bar. There's all sorts of booth seating, table seating, bar seating. It's a really open space. Their goal here is to be kind of a mashup between Italy and coastal California. And I have to say that I think they hit that mark.
Yeah, this is one of the places a lot of people are anticipating. Another one that's kind of an Italian theme is you've got Alpino that's coming together in the old Lady of the House space. So you look at this, mashed up or hybrid or fusion menu. What were the standouts for you?
Again, we're talking about a lunch menu, which I really appreciate. I mean, we didn't even get to dig into the dinner side of things, no pun intended. But my wife and I power lunch together, so that was fun. And we got a couple different cocktails. They have a page of cocktails that's Italian forward. They have a page of cocktails that's California forward, a little more refreshing. The Italian cocktails are kind of more on the Amaro side, more on kind of the Aperol Campari side, the aperitif side. And then they have a whole set of cocktails that are Detroit focused, which are a little more deeper, richer, boozier, as we would like to do in Detroit. So I really appreciate they kind of break that down so you could find your way. So we had a cocktail from the Italian section. We had a cocktail from the California section. And we split a pizza, which their pizzas are really good. They have some wood-fired pizzas. They make them right there. You can see the pizza ovens. They were really, really, really good. And then we got a sandwich, a PBLT, so basically a pork belly BLT sandwich that was really, really good.
Oh, good. And so the vibe checks.
The vibe is super cool. I mean, if you've ever been to an Heirloom Hospitality, a Jeremy Sasson place,
Okay.
which would be if you've been to a townhouse, a prime and proper, that type of place, it really tracks with that. Light colors, it's very light. You've got a lot of whites, pinks, greens, that type of thing. Tons of staff, super trendy looking. It really is one of those places, and I know I'm kind of I've said this before, but it really is one of those places where you feel like you are not in Detroit anymore. You're somewhere else.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other night about this, the idea that there's this weird bar that people have where people get really excited about places that open up in Detroit and then immediately say they like it because it doesn't look like it's from Detroit. And it's kind of annoying in a way. And I also kind of feel like, why can't we just claim that nice things can also be in Detroit? If in order to be from Detroit, does it need to be dog-eared? Or can we just kind of define that Detroit can also have a nice level too?
It's hard to say, Jerry, though, because I totally get it. I'm an unabashed Detroit evangelist, but at the same time, when you're trying to explain something to somebody, the Detroit connotation means it's a little bit gritty. It's a little bit not as fancy, a little more unassuming. So I get it, but also when you're trying to explain something to people, it's hard to explain a high-end, real frilled, real bougie place as a Detroit place because people don't necessarily equate it with that. So of course, we deserve the places like Mad Nice. We deserve places that are the highest of high-end. But when you're trying to explain it, Jared, realistically, it is easier to say like, oh, this is something you'd find in Miami, Los Angeles, Torino, Italy. You get the vibe when I say that versus this is a place you'd find in Detroit. It's a certain connotation, which I would love to change, but it is what it is.
Well, you did use the word gritty, so I'm going to take a shot.
Fair enough, Jared.
My place is across the street from Mad Nice. In fact, it's not new. It's been around for 5 years. I want to give a shout out for the anniversary of Castalia at Sfumato. And Castalia is a great sensory-oriented, scent-oriented cocktail bar in a basement of a really cool old building at Alexandrine in Second. So, I guess our entire show is going to be within 200 feet of each other. But I was so glad to celebrate that anniversary with Kevin, his wife. They're the owners. He formerly worked at Ford. She, has done some design stuff. And they have made an amazing corner in Midtown Detroit. You go down the steps, and there's just something special. I remember them telling me about digging out the basement a little bit lower so that they could fit their cocktail bar down there. And the things they come up with are just absolutely fabulous. Have you been, Devon?
Sure, of course. Wasn't too far from me when I lived in Midtown off of Woodward there. I loved Castalia. It was such a cool little place. I loved taking people from out of town there when I would have friends or family in from out of town. I would love taking them there because it seemed so interesting. Very Detroit, Jared. It feels very Detroit, underground. Not gritty, but also kind of very, homely. People were very friendly there. The proprietors, they did such a good job of making you feel like, you were in somewhere interesting. They explained all the cocktails to you. I was fascinated by the way they were able to marry the cocktail flavors with the essence of their fragrances. It was so cool, and they did a fantastic job with it. So yes, Jared, I am an absolute fan of Castalia. I haven't been there recently as much as I would have liked to. The last time is they did a great job through the pandemic with their, what do you call them? Not canned cocktails. They did
this thing where
they froze them. They
froze them, yeah, and you could drop them in your booze.
Yeah.
Early on, you couldn't get cocktails to go. They had to change the laws. And I remember Kevin dropping by the house, dropping off on the porch a box of frozen cocktail mixes.
And they did a great job with that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's about that creative work that it takes to be an entrepreneur. And I want to praise that. And also, I think it's interesting. You talked about a gigantic place. One of the things that's great about Castalia, it's tiny. It's under 1,000 feet in total, I think. I think it's in the 600s for service area. It is tiny, but because it's that small, it's able to set the vibe. Where someplace like Mad Nice, you need a lot of people to set the vibe. When it comes to Castalia, Kevin being there, the staff that he has selected are just wonderful, can set this vibe in a place. And it's great to see that you can have multiple routes to success here.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of remarking to my wife, there was probably 25 to 30 people in Mad Nice for lunch. And it seems sparse, but hey, this place is so big. There's actually a good amount of people here. Where with Castalia, that would be a crowd. And so it almost made it more exclusive because there were only so many tables. There's only so many seats there. And the other thing they did good, Jer, was they had a really good little outside patio.
Mm-hmm.
The bar itself was subterranean, but the patio was kind of upstairs, ground level. And that was really cool too.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It is hard to make a hospitality business run 5 years, frankly, any business. So shout out to all of them at Castalia. Go check them out if you haven't already. Devon, I'm going to see your power lunch declaration, but I'm going to make a declaration of my own, but in a different area.
Okay, Jer, what do you got?
All right. You know how in past times there was also a CompuWare or Cormanos version of this, but you kind of have the Quicken zone or the Rocket zone as it is today. Or, I know that it's more than just Dan Gilbert at this point with the companies and who's in charge and all that. So you kind of have like the Rocket zone, and then you kind of have the Illich zone up Woodward a little bit.
Sure.
Some people call it District Detroit. I sometimes call it Illich Village because it kind of rhymes together. But like their zone of influence, you've got the General Motors zone over by the Rensen, where they own all that property. Not just the Rensen, but down the riverfront and things going on there.
Yes.
With some recent purchases, because there is more than just the train station, I am going to declare the Ford zone over by Corktown.
Okay.
Where basically there are so many properties that are being picked up by Ford and investments that they're doing that it's really like, okay, when you go into that part of town, one way or another, you're going to be interacting, dealing with, or having to do business with Ford.
Wouldn't it be ironic if the space actually forms an oval?
I think about a park that actually used to be oval shaped back in the day. You look at the old maps where DT is, and you could argue DT has his own, but it's not as big. Like there's its headquarters in Lumen, but they don't really have as much. And there's a building across the street, but they don't really reach out as far as some of the other ones because they're kind of hemmed in by the casino and the freeways. But there was actually a park over there that's oval shaped, a couple of parks on the old maps that you could find. But anyway, that would be very interesting if it was oval shaped. I haven't looked at the whole map, but you've got so much happening over there. And there is word they just picked up, I think, like 6 new buildings over another acre. So it's kind of like I'm sure a multi-pack, if you will, of buildings. But it just seems like whether it's them or through subsidiaries, this is a situation where you can start to build as you go through greater downtown Detroit. And then you kind of got the Midtown zone. You got what Sumosi's doing and her undoubtable de facto mayor of Midtown status. You have the medical center. You have Wayne State. Like Detroit, in many ways, it isn't just like a block or two or a building. It's blocks that end up getting controlled by one entity or another. And I think that Ford is, obviously they're doing stuff with the community and things like that. But I think it's undoubtable that Ford is a zone now.
Ford is absolutely a zone. They are a campus, another way to say it, because, they have multiple buildings. So that's kind of the way I look at it is I was actually over at the book depository building yesterday, which is now called New Lab. So gotta start learning the vernacular here. That's New Lab, Jer.
New Lab. Is if I supposed to say a one, like I understand that in Brooklyn, when I go to a bodega, I need to get like a bacon, egg, and cheese, and it's one word. Does it need to be like New Lab, just one
New
word?
Lab is
Okay.
one word.
One word.
That's going to be what they're going to be branding the book depository space as we know it. And then you've got the train station, and all that's kind of part of the Michigan Central project. And that's going to extend into these buildings in Corktown. And it's basically going to become, you got Roosevelt Park, which they're redeveloping Roosevelt Park, which for the longest time, Jer, say what you want. I know people have maybe different feelings, but like Roosevelt Park for the longest time was really kind of just a park where nothing was going on. There was a lot of vagrancy, there was tents, Roosevelt Park, not a lot was going on. So they are completely redeveloping Roosevelt Park and that front end of Michigan Avenue to be an active space, a lively space. So Ford is really doubling down on this campus that they're creating. They're buying more buildings, so they're expanding. And again, I know that not everyone may agree, but I do think that it is a positive overall that they're doing this. They're investing a lot in a lot of nonprofits. They're also being very, very generous in terms of nonprofit investment, some of the local CDCs in Southwest Detroit and in kind of the Corktown area. They're giving a lot there. I'm happy to see what Ford's doing, and I don't think it's a bad thing that they're continuing to buy and develop more space in that area.
Well, now that it's in process, I'm very curious to see what the end result ends up looking like. Like, what does this mix of buildings and everything else, what do they end up putting in there? What kind of contractors, what kind of suppliers end up being part of this tapestry? Because I think that there are still a lot of questions for people like wanting to see like, okay, so what does this look like? We all see the numbers, we all see the whatever, but like, what does that happen on the ground? And I know that there's some businesses that are already seeing impacts because Ford's had some things going on. I mean, I have had meetings and gone to They've got a building right on Michigan and Rosa Parks, I think, where they've had a building there for a while where they've got employees working. It's a beautiful
the
old
factory
rehab.
is what they call it.
Okay, the factory. Is it one word, the factory? Like the new lab?
No, that's two separate words.
If we had a studio there, would it be the podcast studio?
Yes.
It has to all be one word. All of a sudden, I'm just Jer Stays.
Yes, exactly.
At least there's not a Z.
No, we would not allow that, Jer. We would not allow that.
Well, listeners, I want to know what you think. dailydetroit@gmail.com. Are you excited? Are you nervous? What are you looking forward to see? Are you doing investments over there? What are your thoughts with different things around this? Would love to hear from you.
We'd love to hear from listeners, Jer. I mean, we have our own opinions, but I know our listeners are opinionated in a really good way. And tell us what your thoughts are on the Ford development on Corktown, because I know I'm sometimes biased, Jer. You're sometimes biased, but Corktown is really going to be the epicenter of probably the next few years in Detroit when we talk about development. So it's a lot to talk about and a lot of opinions to get in.
And with that, we are done for today. Thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit, not just today, but throughout the week. And thanks to everyone behind the scenes who make this show go, as well as to our members on Patreon, patreon.com/dailydetroit. If you want to support us with a one-time thing, that's buymeacoffee.com/dailydetroit. We have our fancy new cocktail glasses here ready for you if you join us as a $10 member on Patreon. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Devon O'Reilly.
Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.